This was a few years ago. I was sitting in the back seat of a full car, looking out of the window. It was nighttime and everything was normal. I hadn't been drinking or smoking. I wasn't tired, and I don't take medication. There weren't many stars to look at because we were just outside the city in the suburbs, so I was just staring at the passing buildings. Then everything became brighter, and I had this horrible feeling of helplessness and dread that pierced me so deep that it made my bones ache. So I looked up at the sky and saw this massive comet or meteor thing screaming across the sky, and it was flaming yellow, orange, but mostly green, and it looked like it was really, really close. Like the inside of the atmosphere close. T-minus 30 seconds to impact. That close. I only saw it for 2 seconds before it disappeared behind a building, and it didn't come back out the other side or crash into the earth. Then everything went back to normal. Even the feeling of dread was pretty much gone, but I was still freaking out because of what I saw. I felt the horror at its inevitable collision with the earth, but when I asked everybody else in the car, nobody else saw anything. Not even the person in the passenger seat in front of me who was also looking out the window. They all thought that I was just playing some kind of a prank. All of it was weird, but the part that really gets to me is that the most frightening I've ever felt in my entire life was that feeling. But the feeling was only there for a few seconds, and then it was gone completely. Just like the flaming thing, whatever it was, that comet or whatever, it was just gone. I don't have an explanation for this, and it haunts me all the time. It was such a horrible feeling, and the crazy part is I can't explain it to anybody because nobody believes me. I don't even know what it could have been, really. A vision of the future, maybe even the past. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe space and time folded and I saw something floating in space light years away from the Earth. Whatever it was totally out of place. I was flying back home to Colorado from Massachusetts. During a layover or on the plane, I left my sweatshirt behind. It's my favorite sweatshirt, so it's got some wear and tear to it. I realized I lost it, and I just chalked it up to stupidity. A few days later, I went to a thrift store and found my shirt. Tears and paint stains, and everything was in the right place. All of the marks it had. It had the smell of burnt circuits, that smoky electrical smell. It wasn't a Goodwill, it was at a homeless shelter. It's the God's honest truth, and I didn't want to admit it at the time, obviously. I bought it back, but the chance of it following me and me going into that store are very, very slim. I haven't had an experience this weird ever, and it could all just be a coincidence, but you never know. About 5 years ago in January, I was planning on ending everything and just getting rid of my life. I had struggled with these kinds of thoughts most of my life, and things were just extremely bad at that time. I'd like to note that I wasn't in distress that night. It was something I had decided on a few days before. It wasn't a sudden decision at a moment's notice. I have a history of mental illness, clearly. However, I've never had a history with psychosis. I've never experienced something like this in all my breakdowns. That night, I decided to scroll through Facebook while waiting for my family to go to sleep. I saw a GoFundMe post shared by a friend and read it. It was to raise money for a little boy whose mother and father had both died by taking their own lives very recently. It was the father first and then the mother a week later. It included a screenshot of a post from the mother talking about why she did what she did, which was basically grief after the loss of her husband and what she wanted for her son and for her pets after she was gone, and also that she was sorry. I found that post and read literally hundreds of comments from friends and family telling her not to do it, and then updates from family that she had. I remember reading at least 2 news articles connected to this woman and her husband's death. I remember reading obituaries and the updates about their son being in the care of grandparents, what the mother asked for in her post. I remember the husband was a firefighter and the fire company that he worked for, and how they were raising lots of money for his son. All this made me realize I couldn't do that to my own family and friends, so I ended up waking up my parents and just going to the hospital. When I got out, I tried to find this information again. I thought of donating to the GoFundMe in thanks for saving my life. I have never been able to find anything on this ever again. The GoFundMe post I originally saw from my Facebook friend wasn't even there anymore. Neither were the news articles or obituaries. I remember their names because the woman has my own first name and the husband's name is the same as my dad's, and they didn't have a common last name either. I don't know what happened, but I hope that somehow the family I read about, the kid and their friends, didn't lose anybody else. And I'm grateful for seeing that post that night, no matter what happened or where it all went. I just can't understand how it could all just disappear like that. It's the internet, you know? Things are supposed to last forever, right? I was walking to work yesterday and there were some buildings that were being demolished slowly, like with bulldozers and big cranes with those big claws, and not by explosives. I stopped to watch one and was watching intently because I wanted to see when the windows were smashed. This meant I was keeping a close eye on the top of the floor being slowly knocked down by this big crane-like thing with this big arm. It gets about halfway along the floor and I got bored because no windows were smashing yet, so I left. So today I'm walking into work and the whole floor is back. There's still some damage on the other side that I can make out, but everything that I watched happen the day before had been rebuilt, only to be demolished again as I walked by. This happened on Sunday. We were visiting my husband's family at their cabin on a remote island in the PNW. Anyways, my mother-in-law has trouble sleeping and usually gets up in the middle of the night to read. So she'll go to the living room and read until she's tired enough to go back to sleep. She did this a handful of times during the week when we were there. For reference, this is a small cabin with 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, a living room, and a kitchen. The bedroom doors face each other and the bathroom is between the two. The living room is across the bathroom and is facing the water and has a big open window which lets a surprising amount of light in, moonlight or sunlight. The kitchen is opposite of the living room and the main bedroom. Sunday night, my husband goes into the bathroom at around 2 or 3 a.m. I also had to go to the bathroom, so I decided to follow him out. He opens a door and we see his mom sitting on the couch in the dark, not reading, just sitting there. And my husband asks her if she's okay, and she turns to look at us, but she doesn't reply. He asks again, and she just stares at us. I tell him that I think she might be sleepwalking, but he's worried, so he starts to walk over to her. And she gets up and walks past us towards the kitchen, which is beside our room, but on the other side of the cabin from their bedroom. He calls for her again, louder because he's getting more worried. And his parents' bedroom door opens, and his mom comes out and asks us what we're doing. And my husband and I both freak out because there is no logical way she could have walked into the kitchen seconds prior and then suddenly be back in her bedroom. His mom is weirded out and wakes up his dad, and the 4 of us search the house because the only explanation is that somebody else had broken in, but we don't find anybody. We even check the security cameras and there's nothing on them. His parents think we're just seeing things, but we, my husband and I, both know what we saw. And the freakiest part about it was that the person we saw was wearing this Mickey Mouse nightgown, which neither of us have ever seen before, and had their hair pulled back with a sleeping mask. And when his mom came out of the bedroom, she was wearing that exact same thing. I feel like it was a time glitch or something similar. I have no clue, but we're both so completely freaked out, we can't explain it any other way. A few years ago, my spouse and I were house hunting and viewed a home built back in 1950. As we made our way to the back of the house to the foyer, there were 2 doors across from the front door. We both expected door number 1 to be a coat closet and door number 2 to be a bathroom. My spouse opened door number 1, and it was a coat closet. Behind door number 2, however, was a built-in with a cabinet and drawers painted white, but the paint was so old that it was a grayish hue. My husband said, "Oh, it's a built-in," and then he shuts the door. 2 or 3 weeks later, we revisit the same home with my father-in-law. Again, we open the doors, starting at the back of the home. When we reached the front door, the 3 of us stood in the foyer and opened door number 1, and it was a coat closet. Then my father-in-law opened door number 2, and it was a bathroom with old red velvet wallpaper. It took me a good week to realize that door number 2 went from a built-in to a bathroom. When I asked my spouse about it, I said, "Don't you remember a built-in being behind that door?" And his reply was, "I must have been mistaken that I saw a built-in." He refused to talk about it when I asked, "How do you mistake a built-in for a bathroom?" I was standing right behind him and saw a built-in as well. We've never spoken of it since. And for the record, it was a bathroom in the real estate listing. It's like we both hallucinated the same thing the first time that we went through the house. And just for clarification, built-ins are cabinets or bookshelves or entertainment centers that are built into the house itself. So they don't need to be ripped out or ripped off the wall. In the case of the built-in behind the door, it was drawers below and a cabinet on top, so it resembled a linen closet. A few years ago, I was super depressed and constantly moping around my home. I discovered some chat rooms where you could either listen to people or you could vent yourself. And it was incredibly cathartic, and it honestly got me through a lot of my depression helping others. One day I logged on and I was getting paired with randoms. You're advised to not disclose too much personally, but people usually did. I paired with this younger girl who lived on the other side of the country, and we started talking. She told me about family issues with her mom and her stepdad. Her real dad lived in a different state, and her mom and stepdad just had a baby. She told me about a few specific things that she had done that had gotten her in trouble. She told me her name, and I didn't get a chance to tell her mine. She told me a lot of information about her, now that I think about it. Age and where she lived, the state that she was in. She didn't give me an address, but she did tell me what her mom did, and many other things. We parted ways, and we never kept in contact. A few months later, I go to visit my mom, who lives in that same state, and I spend a few days there. While I was there, she says she wants me to meet her friend that she nannies for occasionally. We go over, and without a shadow of a doubt, it's the same girl's house that I was talking to. Her mom's job was the same, a new baby sister that was the same age and name that she told me, the stepdad in the picture that she didn't get along with, and her mom was telling me about her daughter getting into trouble. Her daughter got into trouble with the exact same thing that the girl did when I spoke with her, and that's when I started getting these really weird vibes. I asked where she was, and I was told that she was visiting her dad in the same state that the girl had told me that her dad lived in. I kept thinking to myself, what are the odds that I'm in the house of a stranger I met online from across the country with no inclination as to where she lived? The exactness of the details between the two parties are insane. I almost didn't believe it. A few months later, my mom came out to visit where I lived with the stated girl, and we met for the first time. We became friends and still talk consistently, and I've never told her that I had talked to her previously on the internet. Is this all a coincidence, or is there something more to this? This happened about a week ago, but I cannot stop thinking about it and how strange and weird this occurrence was, and am wanting to share this with somebody who's open-minded. I was doing the dishes in the kitchen on this particular morning, and on the fridge we have tons of pictures with us and friends and family that are held up by magnets. My husband was looking at the fridge while I was doing the dishes and says, "Why is your face scratched out of this picture? Did you do this?" And I tell him that I don't have a clue about what he's talking about, and walk over to the fridge to see what it is. And this one picture out of 20 pictures on the fridge fridge, my face is completely scratched out. And there is a hole right where my face would be, and a ton of little scratch marks around where the hole is. The picture looks completely normal. The placement on the fridge and everything, besides my face being scratched completely out. Absolutely nobody else in this picture has any scratches on their face. I am a teacher, and every year we take pictures as a whole staff, so I'm in this picture with about 40 other people, and there are no other scratches anywhere but on my face. Whoever or whatever scratched this into the picture did it so hard that it left a long scratch mark on our refrigerator as well. My husband swears that it wasn't him, and when he asked me, I knew that it wasn't me. My cat could not have reached the picture to do this herself either. I have never sleptwalked before, but my husband thought maybe I did it to myself not knowing somehow, or I did it unconsciously in some way. I have no clue why or how I would do that, but nothing else seems plausible unless somebody snuck in and scratched just my face out, which would only be terrifying. It's also strange because a couple of days prior to this, I was complaining how stressed out teaching has been this year and how I don't agree with the way my school has responded to this lockdown with everybody not attending. And this would probably be my last year at this particular school. I just think it's strange that the scratch marks are on that school picture of the school I just was complaining about. I would attach a picture to this post, but I folded up the picture and put it in a drawer, and I cannot find it now, which is so weird. I will try to look at it again tonight for anybody who's interested. Nothing else strange has happened since this picture, and no other pictures on the fridge have been scratched. I just cannot figure out for the life of me how this happened, or who would do something like this, and it's freaked me out ever since. I went on a trip to Montreal with my friends last year, right before this lockdown, and while we were there I lost my driver's license at a bar, which was a really big setback for me because I didn't have a passport, and it was my only ID that I had to get across the border. Long story short, everything ended up being fine. I put off getting a new one like 5 months because of this quarantine, and I didn't care much about trying to get one because it was going to be a real pain. So then in the summer, my dad was doing work in the backyard, and he randomly found my license. It was like covered in dirt right next to the tree in a way back part of my yard. And I know that I didn't lose it back there. I lost it when I was in Montreal. It seemed almost impossible to me. And no, I didn't have any other copies of this ID or this driver's license, as it was my first and only driver's license.